What's going on, everybody? Maggot King combat achievements were just released, meaning I can no longer wear my Zuck helmet. Well, opening combat tasks, I actually did already complete a couple of tasks because of KC requirements and things of that nature. So let's take a look at the combat achievements. Let's scroll down to the only section that doesn't have a green bar. There's 9 combat achievements, and right away, we already did the 1 Maggot King KC. We did the 25 Maggot King KC because we have 1,000 total. Alright, trying to fit in. Kill the Maggot King using only weapons that can be found in Vampirium. Now right away I'm thinking, do the things that you can purchase off of the NPC in the castle count? I don't know, we'll find out. Kill the Maggot King 12 times without leaving the arena. So most of my trips with hard food only have been like 11 at the most. Like it's usually between 8 to 10. But imagine if I bring like 1 or 2 brews, this can easily be done coupled with the supply drops. Speed chaser, 5 times in 9 minutes. That does not sound terrible at all. Especially with max gears, that is, I don't know what it is for like other people. This is probably not a very achievable one. Interestingly, this is the only speed task. Usually there's like 3, right? Especially for a boss like this, where it's like a later in the game and not an early game boss. Without missing a single melee punish. This isn't overly difficult, but it could take a couple of tries from what I can tell right now. Without moving more than 40 tiles. 40 tiles seems like a lot, actually, so I feel like this is doable. I mean, all of this is doable, but, you know, like, it doesn't sound too bad. Without moving beyond the back row of tiles. We might just have to tank damage. I also have heard that there's, like, the inoculation bracelet tech with the Serpalm, which is very slow, but we might have to bust it out for this. And then perfect Maggot King, of course, without taking any avoidable damage or him ever being healed. Well, not much to this one. We just have to play clean and concise. Alright, there's definitely a couple of freebie ones. We'll just go for the speed first because that's just doing the boss normally, I'd say. And this one as well, camping the king. I could probably do both of these at the same time. Let's gear up. We have geared up, and I'm pretty much using the same setup I have been for my last 1000 KC or so, and that's going to be the max mage setup with the harmonized nightmare staff, using seared pages in my tome of fire, casting fire surge, and then the max melee with inquisitors. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and put the scythe on crush right now. And then I've just swapped out a couple of hard foods that I would normally use for brews, and then a couple of prayer potions for super restores instead. We also have an extra regular super combat for when I use brews. Alright, let's see how this goes. And so that was 5 KC, and let's double check the combat achievements here. 5 times in 9 minutes, so that's actually pretty speedy. We were nowhere near close to that, because if we look at our KCs, that was over 2 minutes, very close to 2 minutes, over 2 minutes. Yeah, we're gonna have to get warmed back up with this boss again. So we'll try again for that on the next trip, but for right now, let's go ahead and try the back row only one. I think this one, we may have to bust out the Serpalm or something. Well, actually, we shouldn't need the Serpalm because we do have anti-venoms going, but we're gonna try this back row combat achievement. Something that could cause me to fail this is if I just simply misclick, which would not be great. But yeah, you can walk back on these acid tiles and whatnot just fine. With the yellow ones, you do lose a tick, but overall the chip damage is not much at all. And we did just get a supply drop just now, so that should be able to get us through this. The tricky part's going to be the melee, in which we're going to have to be very disciplined. So right here, we're pretty much only going to be able to hit on the punish. And yep, see, that's what I'm afraid of. Alright, well, we might as well... Unless we can continue to... I'm just going to teleport out here. Alright, just heading back to the bank chest to re-gear. Now, a thought just occurred to me. You can get a Maggot King Slayer task, but in most situations for combat achievements, you actually can't be on task. Although, I suppose it doesn't specify, but I gotta imagine that you can't be on task, just for it to be consistent with other combat achievements. Well, a brand new trip, I suppose I'll go for the speed again. I'm very curious about the weapon that can be found in Vampirium, because the only thing I can think of are the items from the NPC. I don't know if you can get things anywhere else. Oh, we just got some Venator teeth. That's nice. That's for dragon darts. Okay, for this one, I'm going to try to just simply not move, except for the melee phase. So I am going to be tanking a bit of damage here. But it seems like I can get the 40 tile or less task done pretty easily if I just do this. I could probably afford to move a little bit, but I'm just going to go and eat right here. I'm going to tank this as well, because I felt like I used a lot of tiles there. I don't know, just to be safe to secure this combat achievement. One pretty scuffed KC is no big deal. So here we go again. Only really use tiles when we're doing the melee phase. Of course, we gotta make sure we're potted back up, because your stats do get drained whenever that happens. Okay, wasted a tile there, but that should be the sub 40 tile combat achievement, if I'm not mistaken. Digging in, there we go. Alright, that was very resource heavy, so let's go ahead and TP out. Still plenty of combat achievements to do, but we're now going to tackle the one where we can only use weapons found in Vampirium. Now, interestingly enough, this encompasses things that drop from the Maggot King. So, you know those tarnished swords and things of that nature that we get occasionally from the boss? If you clean those, you might get yourself a rune longsword or things of that nature. Those count. Also, the Sun Spear from the quest does work, I do believe. I mean, we'll find out for sure after I go in. And seems like we'll be able to cast Fire Surge with just our Tome of Fire equipped. Although, actually, not entirely sure if the tome works. Maybe we shouldn't equip that, but we will be able to cast the spells, I think. Okay, yeah, we're going to jump in and no Tome of Fire, so we're just going to cast Fire Surge with nothing equipped. So like this, and unfortunately that means we're going to have to manual cast. Maybe I should de-equip the spear, actually, when we do that. We might have some negative mage bonuses. Actually, it doesn't. We can just keep that on. Okay. Alright, well, let's focus up, and this might be a pretty slow KC, I say as we eat a 23 off prayer. You know what though? Maybe it won't be too slow. We're doing a ton of damage. Although our Fire Surge now is 5 tick. That's what felt odd about that. Let's go ahead and safe up right now, and we'll just be ignoring the grubs. We'll see how good this Sun Spear is. We can put it on Crush, so that's what we've done so far. But yeah, we're taking quite a while to even get... What? I swear I turned my prayer on in time there. Okay, we gotta be very careful not to misclick our Tome of Fire. We shouldn't have even brought it in our inventory, honestly. Well, it's not too bad, honestly. It's not great, but it's not too bad. Very luckily, the Fire Surging with no weapons equipped does work. Otherwise, this would go even more wrong. Oh, no! Just brain fart. That was just a very bad KC around. Just having the manual cast Fire Surge and it turning from 4 tick to 5 tick kind of threw me off there, but we know how to do it. Should be an easy task to do. Let's just go ahead and try that again. By the way, this was the NPC I was talking about. You can repurchase all your flails and sickles as well as the Sun Spear here. I do want to clarify that I don't think the flails work because the flails aren't from Vampirium, but the Sun Spear you get off of the quest boss. So I think that's why the Sun Spear works, but the flails and stuff don't. We're very close to being done. Don't mess up now. Just a couple more hits. Right here, perhaps. There we go. And trying to fit in. That is an elite combat task. Our loot, 5 of this gravel, which is actually worth 500k. We now have just 4 combat achievements to do until we reclaim Grandmaster. Alright, we're going to go ahead and try this one without moving beyond the back row of tiles. Just have to be very careful. We've failed that a few times already, and mostly just because of misclicking. Okay, so here we go, back row only. Forgot my spec weapon, oh well. Alright, so right away we're gonna run to the very corner here. Make sure we have auto cast on so we don't get instantly dragged out and fail the combat achievement. DPS is actually quite good right now. We're gonna move back over to the left here because the grub is gonna spawn on this left side first. And I want to be ready for that. Like a so. Also, I did just swap out my sights in favor of the Elder Moth since we're going to be only hitting on the melee punish anyways. Being very careful here, but you can see how strong the Elder Moth actually is. So just double back to the left side, ready for the grub. Gotta be very careful with the grubs. In fact, I'm probably gonna right click here. Yep. And be very patient here. I'll go for an Elder Moss back here. Very careful. So far, so good. Just gotta be incredibly careful and patient. Very precise with the clicks. I'm gonna go ahead and ignore that grub. And now I wish I didn't. Because it just happened to come on this last row. No! Yeah, screw this grub, man. Screw the grub, man. Right at the end. Like 150 health to go. Alright, not sure how many times we've went for the CA as we've, you know, gone through multiple ones at once sometimes, but here we go again. And surely we get it done this time. My stats are drained, so I'm gonna go ahead and repot actually. I'm gonna heal back up because we may potentially take a lot of damage coming up. I wanted to deal with the grubs, but we will be ignoring the grub, and that should be it. We were on the back row the entire time. There we go. Another one completed. 34 adamant ore. So yeah, since the last time I've been here, they actually did buff the loot. They did quite a few things, actually. Alright, with that one out the way, we're going to go for the 12 KC trip now. I just don't have to think too much about this one. Just got to be careful and do the boss to the best of my ability. Hope for a supply drop here and there, and we should be able to get this one done. No time limit or anything like that on this one, nor do we have to play perfectly, but obviously the less damage we take, the better. I did bring in the Saradomin Godsword for good measure, just for a little bit of extra sustain. I think during the melee punish, if we spec, it should work out quite well. We've also brought in Sand Fuse. I don't know, you know, we have a ton of Sand Fuse. They do restore ever so slightly more than Prayer Potions, I think by like 2 prayer points. And, you know, they're also antis as well, so may as well pull out all the stops just to be safe. A Blood Fury probably would have been really nice as well, but while I do have one still, I don't think it has very many charges. Or maybe I don't even have one anymore, I'm not entirely sure actually. Okay, I don't know why I'm standing on the back row like this, we're already done with that. Yeah, when I was grinding this boss right when it came out, it was initially very overwhelming, and then I got into a groove of it, and I mean, well, that's how I grinded out 1k KC. Having taken a bit of a break and now coming back, feels like it's the same process all over again. Well, not entirely, as obviously I understand the basics of the boss now, but in terms of feeling overwhelmed with the mechanics, yeah, that same feeling still occurs. It's going to be like riding a bicycle and just getting back into the flow of it. And of course, it doesn't help that we're not exactly doing the boss in regular ways right now. We are doing the combat achievements. Although this specific task, we do have to go back to the regular ways, and we should be able to get this done without too much issue. Potentially famous last words. You know, this one was actually very close to being a perfect. We just failed it right at the end there. That's quite unfortunate. But what I am glad to be done with is this 12 KC trip. There we go, camping the king. 12 KC, we get 14 runite ore. Let's go pick up this adamant 2H, uncut rubies, and we'll leave the blood sacks on the ground, who cares? Alright, we're gonna go for the speed here. I'm gonna use the IX spec, but I'm thinking potentially a ZCB may be better. And bring a surge potion as well or something. But we'll see. I think most importantly here is that we don't miss any hits. We don't get slowed down by the yellow acid. Make sure to hit our melee punishes, and we should give ourselves a good chance to get 5 KC in 9 minutes. I am going to try and do the Scythe Elder Maw method, although now that I think about it, I should really be using an Inquisitor's Mace and an Elder Maw for the melee punish cycle. We'll see what happens though. A thought just occurred to me, and this is something you could do at Yama. You could actually just reset if you weren't going to get a good time. It wasn't 5 consecutive KCs per se. Well, it was, but it allowed you to TP out. So maybe we could employ that same strategy here. I'd have to read the wording of this combat achievement again. Because, for example, our first KC right now was a 2 minute 17 second, which is not great, right? Like, that is already well behind pace. Okay, I'm having a little issues with the 5 KC in 9 minutes, so I'm going to go for the other combat achievement I have remaining, and that's perfect. Turns out you can just wear a Syrup Helm and negate any of the damage. I mean, of course, paired with the anti-venom, but you can negate any of that damage. What we will have to watch out for is the grubs and the projectiles still, though. Alright, let's see how this goes. We should actually test that right now, actually, before we jump too far in. Yeah. Okay. So that works. Just intentionally stepped into poison there, but with the extended anti-venom paired with the Syrup Helm, it is absolutely 0 damage. So that was one of my main concerns, honestly, while doing the melee phases, dodging these tiles, but that just makes it a non-issue. Now we can put almost all of our attention, as we fail right there, but we can now put almost all of our attention on the larvae as well as properly dodging the projectiles, which is honestly the tricky part. And I think with that being said, I'm actually just going to go ahead and quick leave. I could have my ancestral hat on for this part and just slap on the Syrup Helm for the melee phases, but just to be safe, you know, we'll just keep it on the entire time. Carrions can be avoided by spawning looming shadows on target tiles, and the smaller bits will only target tiles adjacent to the initial target tiles. As piles of carrion tend to land next to each other, the secondary bits can overlap and target what would otherwise be safe tiles. Yeah, so that right there is what's throwing me off. For the highest chance to avoid damage, it is best to look for the more isolated first shadows. Okay. Yeah, we just have to be super locked in on that. But all in the meanwhile, we have to pay attention to the grubs as well. But at least with the Syrup Helm tech now, we can just avoid worrying about that. Which is actually a huge difference, because sometimes there's unsafe tiles solely because there was poison or acid on it. Okay, I may have been mistaken. I just failed that task right there because it says you were hit with sticky acid. So I suppose the yellow ones we still have to avoid. Unless there's something else I'm missing. That should be it. That should be it. Perfect, Maggot King. Very nice. You know what? I'm very glad to not have let this be the last task we have to do. It's usually a bad time when I leave the perfect CA on any boss. Like, Doom was not great. Soul Heredit was not great. This time, at least we have the 5kc trip for last. And so with the last task remaining being the 5kc in 9 minutes, I don't believe this is like Yama where you can actually TP out, so it's got to be 5kc in one go. So what that means is we need an average of about 1 minute and 48 seconds per kc, which really doesn't sound that bad, but I think on average with our typical setup with the Harmonized Orb and the Inquisitors with the Scythe, we usually average 2 minutes more times than not. Now my PB is a 128, so I have seen some pretty quick times, and I have seen like 140s, 150s pretty frequently, but to ask of that 5kc in a row, it's a tough ask. We might be here for a while. So I'm going to try a couple of different things. And before I go on ahead, no, unfortunately, I do not have full Darox. I do have the Darok Axe, and that's how I completed the no pressure, or is that what the CA is called? You know, the infamous one at Alchemical Hydra? Yeah, I got that done without full Darox. You really only need the axe. Actually, do you need the axe? I kind of forgot about the common achievements. Nevertheless, I digress. We do have a few different things in our inventory than usual. We have our Elder Maw. I'm going to try and make sure to use it as a punish, if I remember to. And then I am going to bring the Zerai Crossbow and the Quiver with Ruby Bolts in it. Now, something I'm not entirely sold on is I am going to Light Bearer Camp, which means less max hits on the melee specifically. And we do lose out on like 1 max hit during Mage, but the Ultra Ring with the Scythe, yeah, that is a huge loss. But I'm hoping to spam ZCB specs. I don't know. We're just going to experiment and see how it goes. So we start off with a ZCB spec landing. That's a good sign. Again, we're looking for 1 minute 48 average times. I'm just glad to be done with the perfect CA so that we don't have to, well, play perfectly. And now it's just about speed. Alternatively, we can forego Mage and use ZCB camp with a range setup instead. That might be the move. Like I said, I'm not entirely sure what the best course of action here is. I feel like if I did have full Darox, this task wouldn't even be that difficult, but unfortunately, once again, I do not have the full set. Yeah, in order to get better DPS, I do need to use an Inquisitor's Mace paired with the Elder Maw. So we're already a little behind pace, but we should be able to finish this KC right here pretty much, so I guess I'll just close it out. Actually, it's getting quite slow. We're over 2 minutes now. This might just be a reset. Well, at this point, I'm just going to secure the KC, and maybe we'll get the Crimson Kiston right here. But I will teleport out. But yeah, that was way too slow. A lot of mistakes as well. Adamant Ore. Something I neglected to bring is a Surge Potion, which could actually make a pretty big difference. Extra specs. Over the course of 5kc or 9 minutes, that's I guess that's actually like 1 Surge Potion usage. I think I just lost a ton of time right there, honestly. Oh, and our heart isn't going. Let's just see what this KC's gonna be. While I do want to get this combat achievement done and re-obtain Grandmaster as soon as possible, this is very heavy on my supplies, and I very much would like to at least secure the KC. Maybe get our hands on the Crimson Kiston. Which, ironically, you know, it probably would help here, huh? If I did have it. Okay, and using items that I'm not accustomed to using here, such as the Inquisitor's Mace and the Elder Maw swap, I know that's probably my best option, but I also know that I've gotten pretty good times with my old setup. So the only thing we're going to change here is we are going to ZCB spec, and I'm going to continue using the Light Bear. Hopefully the missed hits on the lack of Ultra Ring isn't too crazy. But yeah, we're going to stick it out with this for a little bit here, and we'll see how close we get. Ain't no way, bro. Oh, I don't know. We're gonna be over the 148 here, but maybe the 140 and the 144 have given us enough cushion. I don't know. Do we get it? Unfortunately not. We were very close. Alright, we are resupplying and heading back in. Honestly, despite not getting it on that first attempt there, first real attempt of 5kcs, I think we were pretty close. And keep in mind, our ZCB did miss a fair few times. So if we can get it to, you know, be a little bit more accurate on this trip, plus I am going to bring a surge potion, and that's going to give me another ZCB spec sooner, I think. So let's just see how this goes. So our ZCB did just miss on the very first run right there as we entered. Unfortunately, you know, I am going to have to reset, and it is a bit of a journey. But missing a ZCB right on the get-go is kind of just putting myself behind, right? So might as well reset at that point. Here we go again. In fact, this has been an atrocious KC, almost 3 minutes long. At least give me the kiss in here, yeah? Nope, 65 more mire fungus. Making my way back for another attempt, and something else just occurred to me, and that's that we can actually wait in between KCs to regen our spec, ensuring that we have a ZCB spec at the start of every single KC, because the timer it takes for the boss to respawn doesn't start until you pull the loot. So we're going to try that on this trip. Well, we're off to a bad start already, a 2 minute. So we're just going to go ahead and reset. But yeah, as long as we don't pull the loot, we can actually sit there and wait for our spec to regen. So I think all the other combat achievements took me about an hour, maybe a little bit more than that to do, but I've been stumped on this Speed Chaser CA, 5kc in 9 minutes, aka an average of 1 minute and 48 seconds per kc. Again, this does not work like Yama, in which you can TP out in between KCs so that you can reset and actually aim for good times so that the average ends up being what you need. You cannot TP out. It is a one-trip thing. The only thing is that you can wait to loot between KCs so that your spec energy regens or your surge potion regens. But even then, I have not come close at all. I've tried different setups. You can see in my inventory, I have max range, hoping for ruby procs with my ruby dragon bolts. I have the Inquisitor's mace equipped right now currently because I've tried swapping with the Elder Maw for the melee punish. I've tried scythe camping like most of my KCs, but I always understood that was not the most optimal thing. Nevertheless, I tried that as well, right? Obviously, our typical max mage setup with the harmonized orb, tome of fire with searing pages in it, fire surging. Yeah, I have not come close, like not in the slightest. I've had singular good times, like a 140, 144, things like that. But every time I would get something like a 140, the next KC would be like a 220. And what that means is within that 5 KC span, now I'm hoping for something crazy like a 130 or a 125. My PB is a 128. And for all intents and purposes, I have max gear. The only thing that I'm missing is the Darox set. And as of right now, it feels like the Darox is a crucial must-have for this combat achievement. Short of us getting nuclear RNG and hitting like 50,000 ruby procs, I don't know. But for right now, I'm just going to call it there. I've done every other combat achievement except the one. And currently, as it stands, it feels absolutely impossible for me. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll do some barrows for a full Darox. But for right now, no longer a Grandmaster. And yeah, the CAs just came out, but I just don't see any other way right now other than to obtain Darox.